Hello and welcome to the Watermine Studio. I'm Jim Bercik with MR Systems, and I'm joined today with Tom Calvario and Dave Larew. Tom is with Max F. Linster, manufacturer's representative, and Dave Larew's with LS Industrial Systems. They are the biggest company you have never heard of. And with that, I'll let Tom introduce his firm a little bit. Tom, tell us about your rep firm.
Thank you, Jim. Yes, I'm Tom Calvario. Our company is Max F. Linster Incorporated, otherwise known as MFL. We're an independent rep firm selling industrial products to the vertical markets here in the Southeast U.S. I have the easy job today. I'm with my expert from afar, David Larew from LSIS.
So Dave, you want to tell us a little bit about your products and your background? And it's pretty much your show today. LSIS is a new product to MR Systems. We're getting educated just like you are today, but they've got a lot of exciting products that I think will fit perfectly into the water and wastewater industry. And luckily we have Dave on hand to help us out with that today.
Thank you. In my travels, I've been around for a long time and started working for LS approximately 4 years ago. And as he has mentioned, no one knows who we are. And I usually start my presentation on the biggest company you've never heard of before. Where we are from, we used to be the industrial group from LG Electronics. That is a $255 billion company. And back in about 2003, we were spun off with several other corporations to form a $45 billion conglomerate called LG, and in the LG or the LS, and with the LS we're part of Industrial Systems. So our background comes from LG, Life's Good, or Lucky Gold Star for people who remember the older days when LG just first started. And it goes back to my original slide where one time I was at a customer's location and he says, I don't know you, and he was a particular product that I won't talk about today, but I asked him what washing machine he had in his house. And he goes, I've got LG. And of course at that point I knew he had the dryer, so I said, what was your dryer? And he goes, LG. I said, what was your TV? And he looks at me, goes, LG. And I went for the trifecta. And I said, pull your phone out. And guess what he had? An LG. So I'm sitting here for my family. You let me in your house, but you won't let me in your plant. So at that point, he gave us an opportunity. We've come a long way with that particular customer. We are headquartered in Korea. This is an older slide. We're currently about $3.5 billion with overseas operations here in the States, Europe, Iraq. We're the leading supplier of smart grid in the Middle East for those. So you can see we're a worldwide corporation. We were established back in the early 70s, and I won't go through the whole slide, but as we came through and we merged with some other companies, some metal smelting, so on and so forth. So we have since come all the way through. I won't go through the whole slide, but as we came through and we merged with some other companies, some metal smelting, so on and so forth. So we have since come all the way through today in 2015. We came to the United States approximately 5 or 6 years ago. We're ranked one of the top 100 global innovators by Thomson Reuters. We've been the top producer in the Korean Peninsula, basically almost from day one. I'll go into a little bit more about the background of the company. Our portfolios, we do power grid business, everything from power plants to primary substations. We're actually one of the very few that do high voltage DC distribution systems. We work with build substations, medium voltage vacuum circuit breakers, all the way down to simple miniature circuit breakers. So from a standpoint, we're very similar to a Siemens, a GE, only basically coming out of Southeast Asia instead of Europe. We also do DCS systems, process automation, building automation. We bring in our automation products such as the PLCs, the variable frequency drives. We do power grids. We actually do quite a bit in the EV and electric car currently. Another slide coming up. We used to manufacture our own photovoltaic, but now LG does that for us. We're big into the railway systems. We manufacture switch gear for power transformer, 800,000 VA. Some of our power distribution solutions are molded case circuit breakers, vacuum circuit breakers, air circuit breakers. We have recently expanded with Trump's tariffs with early in the Koreans for the washing machines. LG built a new plant in Tennessee, which we were able to secure about a $35 million gear project for that. And LG just opened up a new headquarters in New Jersey, and we supplied the medium voltage gear and distribution for that as well. From our automation side of the business, we manufacture VFDs up through 800 horsepower, which I'll talk about one of the lines more in depth. We manufacture PLCs. We're a large manufacturer of HMIs. You would imagine with our relationships with LG and how many millions of TVs that they manufacture, we make a great product. We just launched our IP66, our IXP2, aluminum frame, very nice product. We used to even manufacture our own IGBTs, our diode modules, so on and so forth, but today we buy those out from Infineon in Germany from that aspect. We do integrated systems, process control and water treatment solutions, generation. We probably one of the largest solar generators in Southeast Asia, energy management systems, distributed control DCS systems. We do a smart green business. We sit here and work from generation all the way to the homeowner to a smart customer where we have smart meters and gives them the ability to manage and control their electronics. Smart charging stations, and LEM monitoring controls. We also, like I said, we were in the electronic EV cars. We actually have strong relationships and products with Renault, Volkswagen, BMW. In Korea, we work with LG again, and Kia and Samsung. And you'll notice up here in the United States, North America, we actually have control products in the Silverado and several of the other cars to control the DC voltage for the motors and controls themselves. So again, we're the largest company you've never heard of, but we're in most of your everyday life at some times. This is where I was leading to with the photovoltaic. We manufacture the smaller inverters for homes all the way to the megawatts. We actually have increased that now to 3 megawatts and have energy storage systems using lithium batteries. We just recently finished the acquisition with Parker where we bought their inverter division. So we're expanding our footprint from buying an American company, and we now have LS Energy Solutions group that's beginning to win some large projects as well. We're in the railway business. We do both AC and DC. DC mainly for smaller urban areas, AC for the larger. In our manufacturing plants, we have some manufacturing in China, but most of our manufacturing is done in Korea, and we're expanding into Vietnam. Our global expansion, as you can see, we're moving across the country. We're beginning to move. You know, if you look at where ABB was 20 years ago, nobody knew who they were, and eventually they've become the dominant player that they are. We're in that position today. Nobody knows who we are, but as we grow and continue to move business, which we've been very successful with, I think you'll see that we'll be a dominant player in the marketplace 20 years from now. We actually own our own, I'll talk about that, the test labs. We have 3 domestic and 1 global research and development centers. We have the only power equipment testing center in Southeast Asia, in Korea. I mean, not Asia, but in Korea, PT&T. And we're, I think, about 3.4 billion at this point since 2009. I haven't seen the other numbers yet, which again makes us one of the largest companies you've never heard of. Some of our global providers in the VFD world, we've been manufacturing VFDs for quite a while. We were kind of a contract manufacturer for brand labeling from some of these partners that I'm showing you now. The PLC systems are very strong in the automotive down in Georgia and Alabama, and the tier 1 suppliers, you'll find us there. Switchgear for some of our competitors, you know, in the Franklins and the Nippon Steel and LG, as I talked about earlier. So we're expanding from that perspective. The PP&T is probably one of our crown jewels. We actually test all of our equipment to UL, ANSI, and CE standards. All our products that we bring to the United States are UL. So this gives you a demonstration of our medium voltage testing in the facility. Everybody likes to see explosions, so I figured I would bring this to the podcast today.
Sure.
And this gives you an idea why you should wear PPE and have fault current studies provided in your equipment. But this is also to demonstrate our commitment to safety. All of our products have been tested in our PT&T labs. As an example, our contactors are rated 8 kV, where most of our competitors are only 6 kV. We've tested our VFDs to higher standards, series rated. So that's one of the things that about owning your own little test facility, you get to play with it. What are we selling? Here in the United States, we are selling our miniature circuit breakers. I mean, I go from blowing up medium voltage gear down to the simplest form of 1077s and 489s. Multi-case circuit breakers, electronic trip from 1200 amps all the way down to 150 with all the necessary accessories, shunt trips, disconnecting means, cable through the door, flange mount. We've actually expanded our contactors all the way to 3,000 amps because of the solar industry. We have NEMA rated contactors all the way from double aught to size 7, and they state NEMA. Along with the overloads, air circuit breakers, we're developing relationships with large gear manufacturers for using our equipment in lieu of some of my competitors. Vacuum circuit breakers, we actually have arc resistant metal clad switch gear. Again, that goes to some of the projects I talked about earlier, and then large transformers. Manual motor starters. This is an advantage for us in certain situations. We've actually tested our VFDs with the manual motor starters, so we can give you a series rating or coordination rating instead of having to use MCCBs or multi-case circuit breakers and inline fuses to maintain 100K ratings. So it's a low-cost solution, simple product that can work with our VFDs. Again, it's an advantage of having our own test facilities. The miniature circuit breakers, like I said, we have a very competitive product in UL 1077s and UL 489s. The multi-case circuit breakers, we can do zone interlocking, all on the electronic trips. We can supply power monitoring, power metering, harmonics, depending upon the trip units. They come with Modbus if you need communication systems. So we have all of the bells and whistles in today's environment. I'm going to move into what I'm here today to talk about our VFDs. This gives you an idea of how long we've been manufacturing. Since 1983, we've been manufacturing VFDs. We started as a brand label with Fuji, and then eventually broke out into 88, where we started manufacturing our own VFDs. As we moved all the way to today, I actually have another product coming in the G100 that we'll be launching fourth quarter of this year. So you can see it's a migration of how we've started. We've been doing IGBTs since 1990 with VFDs. What we have, it's of course a compact drive, but this is one of the nicer products for a compact drive. It has two total safety off, STOs, level 3 compliance, sensorless vector, in a low cost, inexpensive mini drive. I have the S100, I call this my shaft turner, but it has a lot of features and benefits, built-in PID controls, function block programming, and we also provide this in a NEMA 4X up through 30 horsepower with a disconnect switch. Again, we get into some of the things from the wastewater treatment environment. We have three C2 conformal coatings on all the PCBs. This is true conformal coating, where some of my competitors state that they just coat the boards, but this is true conformal for those environments that you're looking at in the wastewater treatment. We have the ability to put our S100 on an Ethernet IP. If you're in a Rockwell house, if it's a Schneider house, we can do Modbus TCP IP. So Profibus if you want to do Siemens, so on and so forth. And we're seeing CAN open, EtherCAT. So we have all the communications capabilities to put them on these networks. The H100, which I'm going to talk about pretty extensively, is I'm proud of this drive. We now go up to 800 horsepower. It has world-class features, which I'll get into later. Built-in communications for this is more into the automation or the building automations, which would be the back nets, so in Metasys and N2, and then Modbus as well. IS7, that is more of a system drive for us, encoder feedback. I'm actually able to put we have a small PLC card with limited I/O that I can do small replacement business and operate with a PLC. This is something that for the rural community I've found that we've been very good with. Being that we have, like I said, the second largest testing facility, we have tested all of our VFDs on single phase power. We have a UL file. If you can look, we will show at 240 volts, I can operate X amount of amps. At a 460, which you'd be surprised, it's big in the irrigation industry, but in my past, in my history, give an example, the Shenandoah Valley, there was no three-phase power. So all their pump stations were rotophases and so on and so forth, trying to reduce the cost or use three-phase motors. We now, have the UL file where a lot of my competitors say, oh, rule of thumb, just double the drive. But we have actually tested and can give you test data.
That's very interesting. It's just really extremely informative on the whole breadth of the line, and it's more than just clickety-clacks.
Yeah,
it's also a lot of smart technology and things like that.
Yeah,
also.
I'm the biggest company you've never heard of before.
That's correct.
This is this product, our H100. Again, I'm very proud of this product. We've just launched it to 800. It's a dedicated VFD for the pump and fan industry. It's 120% overload for 60 seconds. Of course, we talked about it briefly with the built-in communications aspect. It is a volts per hertz because you don't necessarily need sensorless vector to turn a pump. But I can do output frequency up to 400 hertz. We have we have NEMA 1 options to whereas I can mount an 800 horsepower VFD on a wall makes it simple for simple replacements and a NEMA 1. Where most of my competitors today, where they're moving to is modular designs in 250 kilowatts or 500 kilowatts. I can still bring a solid unit to the table. This, again, has a UL protection type 3 conformal coating. We're RoHS, CEL, UL, CUL, and we're also plenum rated in the fan industry. Very small footprint. One of the things I like about this, and when you deal with my integrators, is when you get to 150 horsepower and above, we have all of our products can have the heat sink out the back of an enclosure. But we meet a NEMA 12 rating, where most of, if not all, can't do that. So that gives you the ability, to give you an example of 800 horsepower VFD I just did one in Southeast Ohio for the fracking industry. that may have 10,000 watts. So that's like putting a 10,000 watt heater in a box and turning it on. So you have to have a very large box. So by having the ability to put the heatsink out the back and only dissipating approximately 600 watts of the control board, we were able to downsize this enclosure just to be able to fit through a door in a pumping station in a remote area. So it lowers the cost of the enclosure, lowers the cost of the installation. That is a very good feature. We have a dedicated keypad that gives you the ability to do handoff auto built into the keypad itself. We have NEMA 4X remote mounting options for that as well. We have built-in EMC filters. We have built-in DC reactors all the way to 800 horsepower for harmonic distortion for reduction. This is a nice option as well. We give you 5 relay outputs built into this, where most of our competitors will only give you maybe 1 or 2 at tops with some digital I/O that are transistor driven. So we have the ability to run secondary items such as lube pumps, damper controls, so on and so forth. We have put into the product micros to whereas, say if I wanted to do a circulating pump, there's more than this, but let's say a circulating pump, just plug that micro in and it automatically changes all the parameter sets to make it very easy for your programming functions. We have a real-time clock that you can actually go in and schedule particular times and runs if you want to do back flush, backflow, different types of functions, steps, PID loop control on a time. So we do have that capability. We've improved torque boost. That's great for some of the larger pump stations. I've done several of the large 500 horsepowers with long runs that require that additional torque to overcome the head, the check valves, the flaps. Fire mode's more for the HVAC industry. We also can do auto tuning, and why the reason we do load tuning is, I'll talk about that in a little bit, is you now tune to the actual load itself, not just plugged in values, but we actually tune to the load of how it operates with the pump, with the head, with the flow, and with the inlet pressure. We also have this beautiful function called pump clean. That's one of the reasons why we do load tuning, is with the pump clean we can determine that the inlet of the pipe is clogged. So we will, as you can see from the graph, we will slow down, run in reverse, run back up. If it's still there, we continue to, you can set limits to where we're trying to clear the obstruction, so thereby you can start to run. And that's based on the load tuning. Under load conditions, we have that as well. Once you do a load tune, if you notice that the load is dropping, that can give you ideas such as a broken pipe, which will come up later. But this will tell you something's not right. If I'm operating at a set speed and the pressure I'm under load and the pressure is dropping, that should give you alarm functions. Soft fill is a nice feature where you just get started. I did a pump station in Virginia Beach. Actually, they were pumping from Lake Gaston, which was hundreds of miles away and in between pump stations, and you had to fill, a 12-foot pipe. So that's a long time to operate wide open, because if you did it strictly on PID loop, the drive would then run wide open. Pipe broken, as I said earlier, we have the ability to determine that the pipe is broken, so thereby we can shut down an alarm condition. Flow compensation, say if you require X amount of pressure at the end of a long run, your pressure transducer is at the beginning of the pipe section. We can compensate to boost the power, boost the voltage or speed to compensate for the voltage drop. That's more for larger buildings, say like in New York, where it's 50 floors up, and you put in a pressure transducer right at the pump, which is crazy, but you don't want to run 50 floors up just to bring your pressure transducer down. You can compensate for that. We have additional things we can do on the PID loop for compensation to offset some issues with bends or some losses. The ability to do our ramp on how we can model it, and that comes more into play for the valve check when you're operating the larger drives, you don't want to slam the valve, check valve. You don't want to, it gives it an easier reduction, gives you smoother and reduces water hammering. Damper control comes back into the fan control aspect. Again, we can operate lubrication pumps. Some large pumps require it. We program the drive. See, these things are all stuff that was done by PLCs in the past. With our functionalities and what we can do today, we can do this in the drive, therefore removing PLCs. Plus, it's an open type of programming, very simplistic. It's in English. So for simple processes, this is where we're at. We can preheat motors. If you get conditions, Nashville, I did up there, they required, they had 250 horsepower motors that they were concerned in condensation. So you would use the DC current run through the motor to be able to dissipate and not cause shorts when you did that. Level detection, if you're doing a deep well or a well, we can work with sensors and set up level detection. We could even tell you how much money you saved on a payback counter. There are some additional things with some enhanced PID loops. This is a nice function, what we call kinetic energy buffering. We had to prove it out in North Carolina. But what it does, instead of faulting when you have a brownout condition, the drive can actually try to absorb the regenerative energy and try to ride through the brownout instead of tripping and shutting down. We had to meet an 8-second brownout, and we did. Brought it right back up online. It was at a textile facility. Most of the time when you see my competitors, they talk about milliseconds on a brownout condition. But with our kinetic energy buffering, we can ride out for a longer period of time. I'll talk about multi-motor in a little bit. We have the ability to go in sleep mode, and what that means is as long as the pressure is maintained, the VFD will not continue to run. It will go to sleep, thereby saving energy. And if it sees a drop in pressure, it'll wake up and start pumping to meet demand. So we have enhanced that feature as well. We now have firmware which allows the H100 to operate in a lead lag scenario where we can communicate through RS-485 networks up to 8 drives. And what that meaning is we can program to save the customer money on pumps from wear and tear. We can program up to 8 of them in a multi-stage. And when you go to program this, you can do it either a certain way as time or least run, automatically switch between particular drives. You can have redundant transducers fed back into the system on another VFD in case you have a redundant or a transducer failure. In the lead lag control, we can do it a couple of different ways: multi-follower on the PID operation, or you can do multi-master where you have the fixed lag. Again, this gets into some of the lead lag on the operation order. First in, first out. This is where I was talking about earlier. Operation, if one VFD or one pump's operated at the longest period of time, it's first out. The first and next brought on would be one that had less time operation. First in, first out. We have a simple, very simplistic and very easy to operate free software that's downloadable from our website, DriveView 7, which is getting ready to go to DriveView 9, that does very good trending and monitoring. We also have the ability to control small jockey pumps into a system where you have 2 large VFD. I don't think I have a good picture of it. If you had 2 large VFDs but didn't require the third, you would have a jockey pump that would handle smaller flows when required. We also can daisy chain that and program one of these to be a booster pump. Again, going back into lead lag, we have a micro for that. You choose that, and automatically all of your functions or question or your parameter sets come to fold. And from a simplistic, we tell you which direction, which one's running, and the network status of it, and the PSI on the feedback. We have upwards of, I think, 40 different scaling functions that you could look at.
And Dave, can you load that over a USB drive or only from the software, or how do you
For
load those
the
macros?
they're built in now. The firmware that's flashable with we have a tool. And anybody, we don't charge. We charge for the tool, but we don't charge for the firmware. Customer can flash. It's very simplistic. We actually, on the drive itself, has a small mini USB port. That's another advantage. The old days where you would plug in with on the USB to serial port to do all of that, you don't have to do it at that point. Once you flash the drive, the micros will come up in the keypad once you flash it.
Okay.
And I could go into greater detail on a lot of things, so I didn't know how much time I had.
No, that's great. I mean, it is a big company I've never heard of, but and you seem to pretty much have everything that certainly we touch in these systems. Is there a sweet spot that you're, just from your drive standpoint first, that you guys play best in?
It goes back to what I said before. I'm hampered in the municipalities because, new construction, because, those guys control the bid process. My sweet spot and where I'm looking and trying to get my reps and my distributors to play in is the replacement business. Get the customers to try, and they'll find that, once you try my product, once you try an LS product, I don't lose customers. I gain customers in the quality, and I've started in this business 35 years ago, longer than that actually, working for selling Weir drives in Greenville, South Carolina, and one of the first AC drives to Timken bearings, they all blew up. It wouldn't operate. And then on to Reliance. I was a master Reliance distributor selling 1,000 horsepower DC drives to Reynolds Metals on extruder systems. So I've been in the business to watch the migration of the products, and I've sold Reliance, I've sold Rockwell, I've sold Schneider's, and been a drive specialist for these people. But I've been pleasantly pleased with LS on the quality of this product. I really can say that.
And they have, as far as harmonics go, they have the 12 pulse, 18 pulse.
No, see that's where I have some issues. I'm being honest. We're not quite. We're trying to develop packaging right now. We're not where we need to be from a packaging perspective. I do have packagers, that we can go to package these products. We have relationships with some people for some active front ends. I'd like to move away from the magnetics. To me, it just, by the time you bring copper into play, the 12 pulse, if you're going to do 12, you might as well do 18. If you do 18 pulse, the cost of the transformer is more than the active front end that you would have in those situations. These are products we're working on, an active front end.
Okay.
They'll be down the way, but I do have packagers for that.
And all of LS products, certainly we're very interested in the HMIs. That aluminum frame really looked sharp on there.
That's a nice product. Let me show you a little bit on that one. Very cost effective. Again, when I made the comment about talking about think of how many TVs that LG manufactures, and these are somewhat the same screens basically.
And I was surprised to hear also you guys have NEMA rated contactors?
All the way to size 7.
That's very
and they
good.
state on the very front that it's NEMA, and then you have a size.
I mean, we're seeing a big push towards the IEC, but still we have a lot of customers that just love the NEMA just because it's an easier method for them. It saves a little bit of engineering, I guess.
The difference between IEC and NEMA, the IEC, you're looking at a 250,000 cycle count. Cycling 250,000 times, you think, oh my God, that's a lot. Well, if you had an application where you were cycling every 2 minutes and you look over a time period, that's not very long. The NEMA rated, you're looking in the millions of cycle rates. So there's your two differences at that point. That's what you pick up and gain from that. This is the IXP2. This is the one that has, it's an IP66. It's a dual processor. You know, and it has all the feature benefits. If you walk away, it'll dim itself, and it has a proximity sensor, and it will come back online. But the ability for Ethernet, we have software for cloud-based VPN routers, multi-touch gesture control screens, and again, the aluminum is where a lot of you hit on that real quick for that nasty environment. And it comes up into a 15-inch variety, 32-bit color. Let's see, where's my flash? I do gigabyte. If you start looking at some of these, most of them are under the 500 megabyte. I can flash at 1 gigabyte, and operating RAM, backup RAM's a megabyte. We can do video output, sound. Like I said, we have gigabyte on the Ethernet, USB, so on and so forth, at a very inexpensive price.
You've got a lot of everything. Certainly, appreciate you guys coming in today, and would love to have you back, even talk more about the smart grid and things like that. I don't get in much for business.
Let me get my pitch in here.
Sure.
Just to tell you how diverse we are. Bring up my screen. We make tractors too. We used to make for New Holland and Ford, and they decided to go into another area in Asia, which I'm sure they're regretting at this moment. So we decided to come to the United States, and I took this out in the middle of nowhere driving, and I see my company sign. I'm like, what the hell is that? And we sell tractors. So I'm sorry to interrupt.
Well, that's great. Once I get my solar farm, then I'll need a tractor. But certainly something I have a lot of interest in, a lot of your products, and I certainly appreciate, Tom, you bringing these to us today and
Absolutely.
Trying to educate us on these things.
As I said, he's my expert from afar.
Makes our job easy when we have
Absolutely.
someone to explain it all to us. But Tom, Dave, thank you for coming
Thank you
today.
for inviting
We
me.
really appreciate it and love to have you back in the Watermine studio real soon. And thank you, everyone. If you have any questions, just put them in the comments below. I probably won't be able to answer them, but we've got some experts here that'll chime in and get you what you need. But thank you again, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.